Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I am delighted to introduce you today to Linda Hall. Hey, Linda.
Hi, thank you for having me, Karen. I love being here, and thank you for creating this place for authors. Over 300 episodes. I can't believe it. That is quite the record.
I'm with you. I can't believe it. But I love meeting new writers. I love having back old friends. It's been such a, like all things, when you just do something for good, you get paid back tenfold, not in money, but in all kinds of wonderful ways. It's being generous is a wonderful thing, as you and I both know, as people who are generous and volunteer and give. So I want to talk about though how you came up with the Last Gypsy Queen. What was the inspiration? How did that tell us how the book kind of started?
Well, the book started with actually it started with my mother. I grew up in a fairly rural area in Ohio, and my mother would tell me stories from when she was a child about people who worked at this place called Buckeye Lake Amusement Park. And she actually grew up it was so small, it was a village, Buckeye Lake. And in the time period, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, amusement parks were very much a big part of entertainment, and
Mm,
especially in this area, through Michigan, Pennsylvania, down through Ohio. And this particular park, it's sort of southeastern Ohio, and this particular park was one of the not the biggest. It physically wasn't big, but it was just one of the most popular because it was so close to Columbus and Cincinnati and big cities. So people would come for the day or would come for several days and stay in a cottage. So it was just hundreds and thousands of people would come, and it was open every year from early April all the way through the summer until Labor Day. It would close. So my mother worked there when she was young and all the way up through
mm,
18, going to college. And so she would tell me stories, and one group of people that she would talk about were the gypsies. And so you can imagine that it just took so many people to run a park and have that many people come through. So they were a particular group that would always come and be part of that. So that was sort of the spark, the inspiration of where the story started in my head many, many, many years prior.
all right. So tell us the premise of the book.
Well, the premise is so it's set in 1942, and it's just as America is going into war. But like I said, it's at this amusement park, and almost the whole setting of the book is at this amusement park, except for a few small things. But the premise is that there were three women. Marisol, this is a three POV. And so Marisol, her mother, and her grandmother, they're all widows from an event that happens very early in the book. And so
Mm,
they travel to this park. And in the late 30s, early 40s, the Romanis, it was still very much common that the women could not work. They really were expected to take care of the children, keep a nice clean home, but really women were not allowed to work. And in fact, the Romanis really were an illiterate uh, for the most part. If children went to school, they were public schools. They were pulled out by middle school because um, that they really kept to themselves. And we'll talk about the research maybe in a minute, but
Mhm.
the in the research there was so many um, books, movies. There was a TV show. There's even a song we could think of, and they really all took the approach of the Romanis not in a good light. And so as I dug into that research, I thought this just can't be true that an entire population is all of these negatives. So, but it was true that that the being a widow was frowned upon even within them. If you didn't have a man supporting you, you really didn't have a way for income. So they traveled to the park, and their plan was to do the only work outside of the things I mentioned that women could do, and that was fortune telling or tarot card reading. And in fact, the Romanis don't really believe in the sort of the mystical or the magic of it, but because it was a vocation that they could do, they even have a term for it. It's called duckering. They would go along with it, and so that was their plan to make to just to survive, to get on their feet, was to
Three of them are
work.
together in this. Okay.
I'm sorry.
So the three of them are together
Yes, the
at
three
the
of them,
time of
and
the
then
book.
yes, and then she has a younger sister. So they go to the park, and she has a tent, and she's tarot card reading. But what she really wants to do is become a doctor. Her grandfather was a healer before he passed away, and so she really wants to become a doctor. But she's got a big uphill, a big uphill climb, because she's got to figure out how to learn to read, and she's even got to figure out uh, how to do that. So that sets it off. And then there's another character, Will Worthington, and he's the son of a wealthy businessman in Columbus, and he has his money with railroad, and he wants his son to do that, but the son really wants to fly planes and help with the war effort. And then the third major protagonist is a woman named Lila Bennett, and she's the wife of the man who runs the park manager who runs the park, and she's grieving a child, but she also has a secret room in the bottom of this crystal ballroom, and so she connects with Marisol, and she's teaches her to read.
Wow. And so this is a romance. This is historical romance.
It's mostly historical, but there is definitely a romance threading through it. Will and Marisol meet early in the book, but they have to have a secret relationship, a secret romance throughout the summer, because his family is against it, and her clan is against them mixing with non-Romani. So they have a pardon me, they have a romance that through a secret romance through the summertime. So yes, there is a good romance part of it.
Okay, good. So what do you like about Marisol? You know, tell us a little bit about her as a person and what you admire about her.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marisol is she really is, I guess you would say, trapped within where she's born and what she has. But especially in the early 40s, everything is changing so fast. If we think about that time period, even in America, like everything is changing. Women are going to work, taking on the jobs because the men are leaving. And so even her mother is thinking forward that way, which is very much against her, everything she knows and everything she thinks she believes in. But she also wants more for herself. She really wants to be a healer, and so she's got to figure that out. So she just has a tremendous amount of tenacity. But she has a lot of challenges that she has to overcome.
Yeah, you know, think about how women have been treated over the decades, and the ones who have survived and thrived, what they had to overcome. And then if you're also of a different caste, you know, then you also have that prejudice. You know, Italians were discriminated against, and Jewish people were discriminated against, and Black people were discriminated against. Romanis were discriminated against. So this was an easy time for a woman to make her way and to have the ambition that she wants to be a doctor. That is pretty darn impressive. Now, what do you like about her? Will, is that his name? Will?
Will.
Yeah. So tell us just a little bit about him.
Well, so Will Worthington, he's 20 years old. He's in his sophomore year of college, and his father is just his family is a wealthy family, and his father is just very, um, pushy about. He has his son's idea of his life mapped out for him, but the son is just thinking of other things, and he wants to do more than that, and so that's really what sets him on his course. And in fact, in his opening scene, the very first part of his opening scene, he goes and signs up for the draft and does not tell his parents that. And then his father gets very upset and angry because he's gone against his will. But he's 20 years old and he's a man and he can do what he wants. So he's he's a wonderful character but really is able to show a different perspective of challenges that you have, even though someone might say, well, he comes from a very wealthy family, he's got all this,
Yeah.
but that's not his case at all.
Yep, yep. And you never know what's going on in people's lives and the challenges that they're facing behind the facade, behind the gates and doors. We don't always know. So that they both sound like just terrific characters. When you were researching for this book, were there any things that surprised you that you uncovered and like yes, or made you laugh, or anything that you can share with us?
Well, I love research. I think if you write historical, which this is definitely a historical novel, if you write historical, you pretty much have to like research. And research can really off track you because you can go down rabbit holes and you just start exploring things. And then, as you know, at the end of the day, maybe one sentence of all that research ends up in the book. But there were a tremendous amount of topics to research on. But the biggest one probably that I started in the beginning of the big research was the Romani gypsies, and this particular clan had actually immigrated to the United States through New York 100 years prior, so like in the 1850s, and came into New York, and then they migrated down through Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and then actually on down into Texas. But and in particular, a lot of them, this is real. That's what I love about historical, because there are a lot of real facts and real truths. And that's why the
Mhm.
research is good too, because I have had many readers tell me that the things that they learned about the gypsies, but they didn't feel like they were in a class having it, feed into their
Yes.
heads. And so, so I'm grateful for that. But even in Ohio, in Dayton, there were a lot of this clan settled in Dayton, which is pretty close to where the Buckeye Lake Park is. And so there's a huge cemetery there. It's a beautiful cemetery, and there actually are at the top of this beautiful part, a lot of Romanis are buried there. So as I was saying before, there's just so much written about them that portray them in a negative way. And after all that I read, I just thought this just can't be true. All these people cannot possibly be like that. So I decided to take the other angle. And another factor of this, which didn't really, I mean, maybe a sentence made it in, but during this time period, 1942, when the war is going on, of course, many, many Jews were being persecuted over there in the war. But the second class of people behind the Jews was the Romanis. And
Yeah.
half of all the Romanis that lived in Europe at that time were killed during that time. So the numbers were obviously bigger for the Jews,
Jewish people.
but
Hmm.
the number, half of the population, it's just staggering. It really was.
Is. I didn't know that. I knew that they were discriminated against, but I didn't
Right,
realize that half of the
right.
population was killed.
Yes,
Wow. That's pretty staggering. And so here
yes,
you were able to put them in a really positive light
right.
in an exciting story. And I love that. Is there something, I know this book just came out and you're like, "Phew, okay." But I wondered if there was anything on that you started on anything else.
Oh, well, one of the best pieces of advice that I was given in the beginning of my writing journey was that you should just always keep writing, and that really sunk in, and I took it to heart. So, um, as I'm not sure if I mentioned, but my mother, I had started this book, and I had it about 25% done. I'd write it in write it in a airport or in a hotel room. And then during 2020, during COVID, my mother passed away in October, and she and I were very, very close. And so by February, I thought, well, I can pick this back up. And when I did, when I tried to, it was just like I couldn't touch it. And so I wrote in it, I just said, well, I'll set it aside. And so I wrote an entirely other novel. It's contemporary, it has pieces of retail in it. And so I wrote a contemporary novel and then tried to query that. And so it sits on the shelf, but I think it maybe it'll come back someday. So then I was able to finish The Last Gypsy Queen. But when I finished that, I just started another. And so that one is about and a girl who graduates college and goes to New York and works for the largest retail company, and she travels to. It's set in 2004, and so that's when America was really offshoring a tremendous amount, of all the manufacturing, and so she travels very luxuriously, but then she goes to these factories in China, and it's just the conditions are abhorrent. So I wrote that entire novel. That one's done and on its another publishing journey. And then I'm presently in a dual timeline, present and 1950, and it actually involves Neiman Marcus and a stolen jewel as well. So I draw deeply on my retail.
Sounds very exciting. Yes, we keep writing and the stories keep coming to us and the characters keep coming to us. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we can see the Last Gypsy Queen behind you, but maybe you could hold up the cover for
Yes,
everybody.
let's
Just
see.
hold,
There we
yeah.
go.
Yeah, move it over a little bit. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. The Last Gypsy Queen. It's a gorgeous cover. And
Thank
you
you.
can find The Last Gypsy Queen on Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, your local independent bookstore, your library. So, and if you don't see it on the shelf, just ask and they will get it. And we thank you in advance for asking. We thank you in advance for purchasing a copy, whether physical or ebook, however, an audio book, however you purchase it, and that you love it and you write a review because we really appreciate that so much as well. But Linda, tell our audience. Oh, I didn't even ask you for book recommendations. Rewind. Tell us about a book or two that you can recommend to our audience.
Yes, well, I've recently finished Skylark, and that's by Paula McLean. I love her. I'll read anything that she writes. The book that she's probably most famous for is The Paris Wife, and that tells the story of the first wife of Hemingway as they meet and go to Paris. It's a very, very well written book. So Skylark is very good. And then a book that I finished, which I recommend, is called Tiltot by Pain, and that's by Susan Coventry. And then I just started reading one by our common publisher, Julie Bowco, and it's called Square Hearts.
Nice. Cute. Okay. So now, could you tell our audience how they can find you, your website, social media? Do you have a newsletter or a place to sign up? Tell everybody how they could be in touch.
Yes, I'd love to. Well, my website is lindaspaul.com. Everything's on there, the social media, and I do have a newsletter. So it's just there's a tab, and I'd love for you to sign up for the newsletter. And I'm on Instagram, Linda Paul Author. So on the social media, but it's easy to find on the website.
Excellent, excellent. So when you do get in touch, sign up for the newsletter, please tell Linda that you met her on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Thank you so much, Linda, and thank all of you for watching. We're so grateful. Have a great week, everybody. Bye bye.